Imagine yourself stepping into the heart of one of the world's most legendary cities, with every turn revealing secrets only a select few have had the privilege to witness. You're not just a tourist, you're an insider, and you are experiencing Rome as it's meant to be seen. This October, from the 5th to the 11th, 2025, for one unforgettable week, Tiffany and I are offering you the chance to embark on an exclusive, tailor-made journey through the Eternal City. Each morning we'll be your expert guides, taking you to Rome's hidden gems, places not found in guidebooks, places not crowded with tourists. We're talking about secret courtyards, forgotten chapels, and ancient ruins off the beaten path, and you'll see it all while learning about the stories that have shaped this magnificent city. But it's more than just sightseeing. It's about experiencing Rome. From sipping coffee in a secluded cafe overlooking the city to wandering through quiet, century-old streets where the footsteps of history seem to echo, and every moment is crafted to make you feel like you've unlocked the city's most intimate secrets. This is me, Katie, here, with your invitation to step beyond the surface of Rome, to go deeper, to truly connect with a place that has captured the world's imagination for millennia. But here's the thing. This isn't a trip for everyone. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for those who want to invest in something more meaningful than just another vacation. You're not paying for just a tour. You're paying for a personal experience that might change how you see the world. So if you're intrigued, if you're ready to take that step and discover Rome in a way that only a lucky few ever will, then don't wait. Reach out to us now. Let us show you Rome like you've never seen it before. You can find details at our website, thebittersweetlife.net. You can also email us, bittersweetlifepodcast@gmail.com. Ready to make some history? Let's walk through it together this October. And give yourself something to look forward to. Welcome to Rome. This is The Bittersweet Life with Katie Sewell and Tiffany Parks. Hello, this is The Bittersweet Life. I'm Katie Sewell.
I'm Tiffany Parks.
Tiffany in Rome, Katie in Seattle. And today, we're going to lightly discuss a television show that maybe many of you are watching or have now finished watching, which is The White Lotus. But we're going to get to a larger idea. So if you've never seen The White Lotus before, fear not. We will include you in this conversation.
Well, and I've never seen The White Lotus either.
Right. So Tiffany is in this category.
If I can be part of the conversation, then you can definitely get something out of this, even if you've never watched.
Not only that, you suggested this conversation.
I know.
As the topic. So clearly, you can get something out of this conversation if you don't watch The White Lotus. I do. I am currently, as we're taping, watching season 3. Season 3 takes place in Thailand. Historically, season 2 took place in Italy.
Can you give me a very, very brief sort of idea of what the show's about? Because all I know was Sicily and rich people, but I didn't know anything any particulars.
I can try. Basically, every season mostly stands alone. Sometimes a character will make the journey into the next season, but usually all of the characters change. But They do all have one thing in common, generally speaking, or two things really, that they're wealthy or well off. They might not be extremely wealthy, but they're well off. And secondly, that they are somewhat, if they're the tourists, let's say, they're somewhat despicable. They're not necessarily across the board all awful, but the whole show has a very sinister undertone.
Okay.
And every season takes place at the White Lotus. And the White Lotus is a chain of resorts that are scattered all over the world. And so we did the White Lotus hotel in Sicily, and now we're doing the White Lotus Hotel in Thailand. And it's just about the people who are staying in that area for whatever length of time it is, guests and staff. Okay.
Okay.
And then there's always, I can't really remember season one very well at this point, but it often will start with a mystery, like there'll be a body floating in the water, but we won't know whose body or how or why or when or how they got there. And so
Sounds kind of good.
yeah, so the whole season you'll be wondering like who is going to be the body in the water. And season 2 had a body in the water, and season 3 starts with a body in a different kind of water. And so the whole time it has that kind of sinister undertone, who's going to end up in the water dead. Yeah, so that's kind of the premise of it. But it is also kind of poking fun at the luxury resort crowd. So yeah, so that's basically the premise, I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, this article that you sent to me basically raises the idea that they quote a woman named Sarah Stodola, who I looked up. She is the author of a book that's called The Last Resort, A Chronicle of Paradise, Profit, and Peril at the Beach. And she wrote an article about saying how much Hollywood film basically can impact an area that it's films in. And she's citing, I think, the movie The Beach, which caused tons of destruction to a bay in Thailand, because after people saw the beach, everyone wanted to go see the beach where the beach was filmed. And apparently it caused so much destruction, environmental destruction, that they had to close that bay for 4 years to try to get it to recover after it was overrun by tourists. And they're citing, of course, White Lotus, because White Lotus in this particular season, season 3, makes this resort in Thailand look so beautiful and so idyllic that even I, watching it, have thought, gosh, I got to get back to Thailand. And I really do need to get back to Thailand on the coast, because most of my travels in Thailand have been to the interior. I've never really been on the coast of Thailand. And now I'm watching this show and I'm like, why don't I plan a trip to the coast of Thailand? Well, the thought is, of course, that I am just one of however many millions are watching this show thinking, you know what, I should plan a trip to the coast of Thailand. So that Thailand here is like bracing to have, basically to try to respond better to the possible influx of tourists they're about to see than they did when the beach was happening, where they didn't really protect their property very well. But in the other hand, the Thai government also purposely tried to attract White Lotus to Thailand because they knew that it would bring about this influx of tourists that would be amazing for the economy. In fact, it says in this article that they offered tax breaks to the tune of $4.4 million to try to take the filming away from Japan, where they were planning to do it, and move it to Thailand. So in a way, they've done it to themselves, but, they also are going to have to do something to not ruin their bays like we ruined them the last time. But I think the point that you wanted to highlight, so I'm going to introduce it and I'll throw it to you, is this one notion, which I also think is absolutely lovely. Before I introduce that, though, I should mention that the area that they're filming the White Lotus in, they say in this article, already gets 3.5 million annual visitors every year. And the local population is only 70,000 people. So
it's just insane.
And they say that those locals have to endure perpetual water shortages and waste management problems because of how many people come.
Here's my thing. And I mean, I want to get on to the other parts of this topic that you were about to read, but I do kind of want to pause just for a second, because I feel like, and especially this is true in poorer countries like Thailand, you have the government who is saying, hey, let's give tax breaks so we can attract these, this film crew, and we're going to make tons of money and it's going to be good for the economy. But I feel like the people, for the most part, the average people, especially in a place like Koh Samui, Thailand, they're not the ones who are going to be directly benefiting from this. Maybe a couple people, like maybe there's some people who have like a small boating outfitting business or a snorkeling business. And of course, the big hotels, but I'm talking about average people. And maybe it'll create more jobs. But again, what kind of jobs? Like, hotel staff. I don't think the average Thai person, and maybe this is ignorance on my part, but I feel like the average Thai person is not going to be benefiting that much
Mm-hmm.
from, a huge, massive boom in tourism on this tiny little island. I feel like the suffering of the environment and of the people who are overrun and maybe can't live their own lives in the way that they would ordinarily would, I often feel like it's disproportionate to what is coming in. And a very small group of people are going to be benefiting from all of this tourism. And I see that in maybe a less extreme way in Italy. You see people talking about, oh, well, and it's a typical obnoxious tourist thing, to be like, well, they should be happy to have our business, like, you can picture a cruise offloading in Venice and they should be happy that we're here.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is, the average Venetian, their life is not being improved in any way by the cruise ship tourists or just any tourists, really. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but especially day trippers and tourists and cruise people who aren't spending any money in the local economy and they're just causing major problems with flooding. And it's like there's a government on one hand, and I could sort of include on that side, the big corporations and these mega hotels and stuff. But I don't really think it trickles down to ordinary people.
I think it would depend on how much of the economy there is already built around tourism to see how much it would actually affect the local people. Like, because
Hmm.
if catering to the 3.5 million visitors is mainly what it's oriented toward now,
Hmm.
then it would benefit them probably more than if it's, I don't know, somewhere like Venice where they obviously know that they have tons of visitors and it's a top place that everyone wants to go. But I think, a bigger percentage of the residents there have other stuff going on.
They do, but the problem is, and I mean, I'm going to speak for Italy because I don't know enough about Thailand.
Well, I don't know enough
Um,
either. I should mention about this particular area that they're talking about, but I mean, that's just my counter to you is
yeah,
like it's
no, I
possible
appreciate
that
that.
it's very helpful if
I
if
feel
it's
like
oriented that way.
in a city like Venice, you have no more preschools, you've got no more daycares. Every apartment is an Airbnb. Every palace is become a hotel, and every restaurant almost has to cater to tourists. And so, what kind of, I mean, if let's say you're from Venice, let's say your family goes back generations in Venice, the Venice of your grandparents and your great grandparents is pretty much gone.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
even like I see even in Rome, it's not as bad in Rome because Rome is a big city. And so you have lots of different industries going on here, not just tourism. But nevertheless, I see shop after shop after shop that we're like, okay, this was a mom and pop like food shop, and this place was a bakery, and this place was like a tailor. One by one by one, they are turning into souvenir stands and mini markets.
Mm-hmm.
It is just like in the 20 years that I've lived in Rome, the number of independent family owned shops making high quality handmade products or, high quality food, they're just disappearing. And that's partly because of tourism. The tourism jacks up the rent. So these people can't afford the rent of their shops anymore. And they either sell or they like, hey, I'm just going to turn this into a, souvenir stand and I'm going to make a killing, instead of trying to sell handmade shirts that, take hours to make.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the kind of hidden cost of over tourism.
For sure.
And I work in the tourist industry and I should want to have lots of tourists, but there can be too much of a good thing and it can ruin a place.
Well, and it also could be about like how do you allow the tourists to come? Like if this little island, which why they would want more people when they already get 3.5 million visitors. I don't know why I keep want to say dollars. Apparently, I need some money. 3.5 million visitors annually already. Why they would ever want any more than that? But I do think that if it was somehow controlled in some way, and I'm not saying like, okay, let's have everyone issue visas from now on, that would be a
Mhm.
pain. But at the same point, if Venice, which I know it's trying to, limited how many people could be in the city at any given time as a visitor, it might be different. I don't know. I'm not even sure if that would be possible. Like, how would you know if I was there or not, as a
Yeah.
visitor? So
It's definitely not, there's no easy answer.
but I mean, there are like ways to be a tourist. Like if people come on a Rome trip, they're technically tourists, but I would argue that they are behaving differently than you might be if you were a tourist coming in some other way, like some giant bus tour that's just moving itself across the country. I think it's just two different things. It's different
Yeah, well,
approaches. It's different effects.
that idea is kind of the line that popped out at me that I sent to you. And if you want, I can read it.
Sure. Go ahead.
This is, by the way, this text is from a newsletter. It's not actually from an article, but so I don't know who wrote it, but it comes from the VoiceMap newsletter, and VoiceMap is the audio tour app that I can collaborate with, and I have some audio tours up on their app. But anyways, this is from their newsletter. They said the problem with the White Lotus effect, as they call it, draws most clearly into focus is our collective poverty of curiosity. Travel is becoming less about the places we visit than about us in those places. And I think that is what you just were trying to say. You can come to a place, but are you curious about it? Are you interested? Are you going to learn about that place, or is your whole trip just about you being in that place?
Yeah, well, and
And I thought that was so interesting because I'd never heard someone put it that way.
it's very well put. But I think it's also, as it relates directly to the White Lotus, the show, it is basically a show about people who spend the vast majority of their time while they're visiting in the resort that they're visiting. They spend all day by the pool, they get massages, they're kicking about Thailand this season, but they're kicking about Thailand at the resort. And so I mean, that's a perfect example. It's like you're not there to experience Thailand per se, except for the shreds of culture that you get with the way that they orient resorts, like cool plant life and lizards that happen to be crawling across the room. But, you're not out there wandering the streets or visiting the neighborhoods or whatever else.
Meeting the people beyond those who are, serving you.
Yes, exactly. Should I read the part that goes on? Do you want to read the part where they?
Sure.
So, so
You
they.
can, I think the next part is a quote from Sarah Stodola. Is that the name? Sorry.
Stodola. That was my guess. Yes.
Stodola. Yeah, so the newsletter is quoting an article that was written about the White Lotus effect.
Right. And so Stodola, who wrote that book I cited earlier, it says she agrees, quote, travelers have gotten away from expecting to have to adapt somewhat to a place. Shifting that mindset to expect to have to assimilate into the place that you're going rather than the other way around would be a really big positive. Basically, when you travel, you should assume that you're going to have to adapt to how people are living there, not that they have adapted to how you want to live while you're there. Basically.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that this is even more of a problem at those resorts because when you go to the resort, you're like in an enclave. It's like you might as well not be in that country. You just having it's like you've got the view. It's like you've got one of those fake windows that has a fake view out the window, but you're not really there. And I mean, yes, of course, that's an exaggeration. You are there and you are enjoying the beauty of the place and hopefully the food, but it seems so superficial. And I feel like, and I'm not sure, but I feel like this is getting worse. Like it didn't always used to be like this. And I was thinking back to my previous travels, and I was thinking back to my trip to India. And when I was going to India, and it might have been on the flight, I had a guidebook back like we used to have back in those days. I had actually brought three guidebooks with me, and some of them were very big. Um, I was a lot of extra weight, but one of them was like the eyewitness travel guide. And I love those books because they've got so many great images. And at the beginning of the book, there was a timeline, really beautifully done with lots of images on it. And it had probably like 8 pages or more of the history of India. And I read that. I was like, I want to know. I want to know the history of this country that I'm visiting.
Yeah.
I want to understand. I want to have some, I mean, obviously in 8 or 10 or 15 pages or whatever it was, you can't get that much of an understanding, but it's a starting point. And I feel like even on my more recent trip, my trip to Japan last year, I didn't do that. I didn't sit down and be like, okay, I'm gonna study, superficially, but at least in some way the history of Japan. So I know some of it, but I
Hmm.
don't know like, the old stuff. So I'm even looking at myself and my own behavior, and I feel, am I becoming less curious about the places that I visit?
Hmm. It's interesting. I'm guilty of both in the past in my travels. I've gone to places where had done research. There used to be that series of books called Culture Shock, whatever, Culture Shock Vietnam, and it would tell you some of the history and some of the things like don't do this. People find that really offensive, or this
Hmm.
is why people are doing this thing that seems weird to you. This is what they're doing, or whatever. It would just
Hmm.
kind of let you in on some of the ways culturally and socially and historically people are going to act and be reacting to. But I've equally been in places where I did no preparation at all, and I'm standing in some museum that's talking about some horrible atrocity, and I'm like, wait a minute, what happened here? And you just feel like a complete jerk. You're like, how could I have not have known before I came to this country that all of these horrible things happened here? I've definitely
Well,
been on both sides of that fence.
but I mean, to your credit, you were at a museum curious enough to find out
Well,
about
actually,
that.
I was just taken there by somebody who was like
All
a
right.
local. So, I mean, I went along with it. I'm just
You
like, yeah.
went, and were you very young?
I was in my 20s, yeah. But I mean, I generally speaking, do seek out the locals to try to get a real impression. I don't like feeling like I'm in a fake zone. That really starts to bother me. In fact, recently when we went on that trip to Bali last year, we were staying in like it wasn't really a resort. It was just like a little tiny private residence. But we did have a guy that was hired to drive us around, and we hadn't done much research because we found out we were going no time beforehand. And it was a like free trip offered, no preparation. We're like, "Do you want to go to Bali? We have this free place to stay." And we're like, "I guess so." We're there, but I felt like so many, because we hadn't done any preparation. The driver would say, "Well, what do you want to do?" And we'd be like, "I don't know. What could we do?" And he'd throw a couple things out, and we'd be like, that sounds cool. Let's do that. Like, let's go walk around a rice field, But then you get to the rice field and you're walking around and there's all these places to take Instagram photos. And there's like, it just felt so manufactured. He took us to a tourist site. This isn't like
Yeah.
us in the rice field with people who are working a rice field. This is us walking around where no workers are working in the rice field. We're still learning about the art of harvesting rice from a
Hmm.
guy, like a teenager that's walking us around talking about rice. But it felt like, oh, okay, well, we're just in a manufactured experience. Like, this isn't something that locals do. This is a
Well, I
tourist
mean, there's
version of
going to be a
rice.
certain amount of that no matter where you go,
Oh,
I
for
think.
sure. For
And I
sure.
mean, you don't have to do those things, but like if you go to Venice, chances are you're going to go to a glass factory and watch them blowing glass. And there are probably a lot of those factories where they're basically catering to tourists, and they're probably making stuff and selling stuff too, but it's not like, like you said, in the wild, and you just stumble upon this guy in his glass factory and wow, that was so amazing that we happened to see that. It's an industry. The glass factory, the
Yeah.
glass
Yeah.
industry in Venice is, it's highly funded also by tourism. I mean, I don't think we should feel bad for doing those things because it, it's
Yeah.
it's almost unavoidable. However, I think there are things we can add to that that will help us go deeper.
Yeah.
And one of those, of course, is like talking to actual locals if you can communicate, which is not always going to be possible. But if you can communicate and seeking out places that are not on the typical tourist track, if you can, if you have time, if you have the opportunity. It's not always easy to do in certain places. It's a challenge. I think about my trip to India all the time. I mean, I was there for 6 weeks. I was on my own. I was backpacking. Some of the time I was traveling with people I had met in hostels or guest houses. I was taking the train. I was sitting in the train station waiting to buy my tickets because you can't, there was no other way to buy the Indian train tickets at the time. You just had to go to the train station. I felt like it was very real India. I was going to restaurants full of Indians in the south of India. There were plenty of people, dressed in their traditional dress, which is very different from the north of India and seems very, and people just, it seemed like from what I experienced, and I did go to tourist sites as well, but like it seemed like I was really getting to know the country.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very, very grateful for that trip. I think that was one of the best trips of my life. And I stayed in some, I mean, it was not luxurious. Like I was staying in some ratty places
Uh-huh.
and some sketchy places. And I was riding the train with, lying on the couchette over from a guy who looked a little bit freaky, So I had some experiences like that. And I mean, that's why traveling when you're young is so great because like you're more willing to just rough it and go with it. And when you do rough it, and when you choose like to stay in somebody's extra room for, 50 rupees a night instead of staying in the fancy resort, you're going to have a totally different experience.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. Very bold of you, Tiffany. There, so that description to some sounded like an absolute nightmare just now. Not,
Well, I
not that they
mean,
wouldn't want to see India, but but all those kind of unpredictable elements, and
but
and that's
that's
the
what
thing.
travel's all about, right? I don't
I
know.
mean, that's the thing about as tourism, like basically over time, it does feel like a lot of these places that people love to visit, India included, are trying to shave off the edges to make it not as hard to, so you try to shave off the perception that you're gonna have to stay in somebody's back closet for 50 rupees a night to be able to experience it. But yeah, I love what you're saying there for sure. I mean, do you think that this is a rich person problem? Because that's sort of what White Lotus is poking fun at, that this is a rich person problem.
I don't know. I mean, it's definitely a first world problem for sure. I don't necessarily think, I mean, I think there's plenty of middle class people who travel and they might not be staying in luxury resorts, but they might be staying in some other kind of resort. And I have some friends, I won't name names, they're Italians, um, who recently went to Egypt, family trip with, their son, and they went to a resort on the Dead Sea, and I'm sure it was beautiful, but they they didn't go to Cairo, they didn't go to Luxor, they didn't do any of that. They didn't go and,
Mm-hmm.
look at any pyramids. They just went to the beach resort. And I kind of wanted to be like, of course, I didn't say this, so I don't want to be judgy, but I'm kind of want to be like, you went all the way to Egypt and you didn't go see the pyramids? Like you didn't go see the history? Like what? I don't think I didn't realize there was any other reason to go. Um, so and those people are definitely not rich people by any means. They're, I would say middle class people. So I don't think I wouldn't say it's a rich person's problem, but certainly a first world problem. People who are traveling for pleasure and want to have it's hard because people want to relax, right? People work
Yeah,
hard and they take this their vacation. And it's like, hey, yes, I want to go to Thailand, but I also want to relax.
right.
So, I just want to be in a resort where everything's taken care of. And I get that. And occasionally Claudio and Aurelio and I do that too. I mean, I don't think we close ourselves off so entirely when
Yeah.
we have gone to resorts. We do also explore the country that we're in. But people don't have lots of holidays in the States. They don't have lots of time off, and
Yeah.
you want to relax. You want to be babied and pampered, and I get it.
Yeah, it's almost like it's two different types of vacation, really.
Yeah, it's almost like you need 1 week of exploring and 1 week of relaxing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And maybe you're people that didn't go see the pyramids were just following our advice that we often give on this show. If you're not interested in the Vatican museums, don't go. Not everybody has to go to the same thing. And they were like, we want to go to Egypt, but we have no interest in seeing the Sphinx or the pyramids. And you're
Mhm.
like, I've seen pictures of those my whole life. I'm good.
Perhaps.
Then don't go. I mean, this is the hard thing about topics like this is like it cannot be solved because it's equally one thing and another thing. Say, okay, not everybody go to the pyramids. The pyramids are being overrun because everyone wants to go see the pyramids. But at the same point, you're like, well, don't miss the pyramids. Like, you went all the way to Egypt. You know, it's the same thing where we're like, if you come to Rome, you don't have to see the Vatican museums. I promise you. Yes, it's interesting, but there's other great museums. And you're like, but your friends would be like,
But
you went to Rome and you didn't.
You didn't see the Sistine Chapel? What?
Yeah, exactly. It's like we're all sort of stuck in the what if I'm only here this one time dilemma, And what if I just want to relax? So yeah,
It's very true. So the last thing that I want to touch on is those very last words about us in those places. When did it stop becoming about those places and started becoming about us in those places? And I really think, and I wonder what you think, that social media has a huge part in this.
yeah.
The self-facing camera,
Yeah.
right? I mean, something that did not exist. It did not exist even in the mid 2000, what do you call those? The noughties, the oddies, whatever it was, when I moved to Europe.
Yeah.
Okay. There was no front facing camera, right? You had a digital camera. If you wanted to take a picture of yourself, you had to turn your digital camera around, look like an idiot, take a picture of yourself, and hope that you were actually in the shot because you couldn't see the screen.
Yes.
And the front facing camera in combination with social media, I feel like has really dialed that up. That sense of like, I'm not here to see Rome. Rome is going to experience me almost, right? Like I'm going to wear this big long red dress with a train trailing behind me and I'm going to run through the Colosseum and it's going to
Yes.
be me. It's going to be the Colosseum starring me,
Yeah,
right?
it's Rome the backdrop rather than
Yeah,
Rome
yeah.
the
You see it.
attraction. Yeah.
You see it at the Trevi Fountain now. Now they've changed the rules of the Trevi Fountain, which is, I think, a good thing. They're letting people go down to the rim of the fountain in small groups, so you can't like it can't be flooded with people. But the reason they had to do that, I believe, was not because are more people. I mean, and there are probably more people, but I used to go down there all the time with clients. You wait, you bustle, you got to elbow your way down there. You wait until somebody moves aside, and you sit down and you snap your picture. You throw your coin, and you go. Now, everybody down there is some kind of movie star, or they think they are, and they're sitting there completely unabashedly for like 15 minutes trying to get the perfect shot. You got to move on. Like there's no space for this here. There's too many people. There's too small of a space. This is not going to happen for you. You're
Yeah.
not posing for the cover of Vogue. I just see that over and over again. It's nauseating. And I'm not going to say I've never taken a selfie of myself. I have, but it's the excessive care that goes into it. It's got to be perfect, and and the clothes and the hair and the nails and the props. It's just like it is not about the place anymore. It is a backdrop, like you're saying.
Yeah, it is disturbing when everyone becomes like the star of their own show to a certain degree. Yeah, I mean, and we've harped on this before. I mean, I had this thought just today, and I'm neither one of us is immune to looking at Instagram from time to time, and nor, and we try to talk to the camera from time to time. Occasionally, reluctantly, we're trying to get better. But I was just today wasting some time over lunch looking at Instagram, and I was watching these people who. It's the most beautiful sunset you can imagine, okay? They're standing on a beach, and it's a post to celebrate their young people, of course, to celebrate their anniversary, whatever anniversary it is. And they've set up the camera somewhere on the beach, because it doesn't even have to be self-facing. It just has to be like, I can immediately look at the product we just made. Before we used to go on a trip, we'd take some pictures, we'd get home and be like, oh, that's kind of disappointing. It didn't really capture what I was hoping to capture, but oh well. At least I looked at it so much with my own eyes. I have a picture of it in my head, right? These people we can look immediately at the product that we've created. So they have this gorgeous sunset. They're probably over their minds with glee. They set up the phone. They have their hot little swimsuits on. They walk out to the beach as if there's just two people hanging out holding hands, and then they go into the surf and they stand there and they make out. Right? And of course it's cut in a bunch of different places because, it's got to look like perfect. And I just thought, yeah, when you first look at it, you're like, oh, how beautiful and romantic. And then my brain always takes that extra jump being like, how beautiful and romantic was that when the whole time you're being filmed and you're like, I hope we got the right shot. And if we didn't, we're going to do this whole thing again just to make sure that it looks right. It's almost like, I don't know, in service of the manufactured experience. It's like what is it? It's in service of what it looks like rather than sort of in service of what it feels like.
That is perfect. That is absolutely perfect. It's like, and I'm guilty of this. It's like letting your tea get cold because you're taking too many pictures of it,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah, that's another great description. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Well, it's an interesting topic, but we're not going to solve it today. So, why don't we leave it there? Can we put in a plug for coming to Rome with us at the end of a discussion
Yes.
like this?
I promise you that it'll be different. I
It'll be an
promise you,
authentic experience for sure. No question.
and you will see because we will take you there. You will see those places that are off the beaten track. You will find treasures that I don't want to say no tourist has ever found before, but let's just say only the ones who've been with us. Well,
Yeah.
almost only. I mean, literally, we take you to some places that even people who've lived in Rome for 40 years, like my father-in-law, had never been to before I took him there. He's probably lived in Rome for 50 years by this point. So there are places, yeah, there are places that even the Romans don't know about that we have searched for painstakingly and discovered, and we want to share with you. And obviously, also some places that are places you've probably already heard of and have seen photos of. But I think it's a great combination of the two.
Mm-hmm.
And we try to avoid those big overcrowded places whenever we can and show you the real side of Rome and show you and tell you where to eat because
Yes.
that's very important for a lot of people
Oh,
is
yeah.
finding the good restaurants and not just the tourist traps.
I will say, as I get older, the one thing that bothers me more about travel are those days where you've done all this cool stuff and you're hungry and you just want to like eat something and you don't know where to go. And you're
Oh,
like,
it's the
and you
worst.
walk up and down the pier or something and you think, does this place look good? Maybe it looks good. You know, maybe, I don't know, maybe that place over there looks better. And you spend like 45 minutes. That's my least favorite thing about travel now is trying to figure out where to eat. And so, yes,
Yeah,
the
I've
fact that we tell
researched
you
it
where to eat
before.
is like
Yeah.
one of the best. We give you like a little book to tell you, to advise you where to eat. It's not like we tell you you must only eat here, but
No,
yes.
we have about 60 hand-picked restaurants, bars, cafes, and gelaterie that are our secret places. Some of them are secret, some of them are more popular, but there are places that we share and recommend.
Yeah.
So that's one less thing you have to think about.
And because you pack it full of so much interesting information, those tours. I mean, it's not like the people who have come with us the last 2 years have not taken a single picture, but I don't feel like people are spending a lot of times being like, how do I capture myself in this moment? You know, they're
Yeah.
learning,
Their
they're
their eyes
discovering.
are
Yeah.
their eyes are lighting up
They're looking. Yeah,
when
I
they're
know.
learning about.
You get to stand in the front and watch their eyes light up.
Yeah, it
I'm
is
jealous of
special.
that. Yeah, because I'm always in the back.
Oh,
All right. Well, if you're interested in coming to Rome with us this October, the 5th to the 11th, you can find information in the show notes or go to our website, thebittersweetlife.net, and you'll find everything there. And we'll leave it there. And until next time, this is The Bittersweet Life. I'm Katie Sewell.
I'm Tiffany Parks.
Join us again. Bye.